some of your critics will say that in your latest book, for instance, you're long on analysis, but short on solutions.
That's a very common and very interesting criticism, because if you look at what I've written, every topic I suggest, there is a solution mentioned. It's just they don't like the solutions. So if you don't like the solutions, you can't perceive them. That was actually a point that Orwell made rather well. His famous essay on nationalism, he describes the nationalist as someone who has a remarkable capacity not to perceive what he doesn't want to believe, either ideas that he doesn't want to think about or atrocities committed by his own side. Can't perceive them.
Speaking about solutions, do you believe in political action? Do you believe in political parties? Do you believe in a third party, for instance, here in America?
There's no general principle about that. It depends on circumstances. Sometimes the right kind of, depending on what you're trying to achieve and what the circumstances are, the right choice of tactics might be political action through one of the existing parties or a third party, or it might be civil disobedience and resistance, or it might be other kinds of organizing. There's no general principle that tells you universally this is the right kind of action to undertake.
Do you feel any affinity to any political party? Are you a Marxist? Do you call yourself an anarchist? Where would you put yourself on the political spectrum?
Actually, a friend of mine, there's a book of essays on my linguistics and philosophical work, critical book of essays, and one of the contributors is a friend. Starts off by complaining that he says the only ism I seem to believe in is truism, which is essentially accurate. Most of what is known about the social, political, economic, cultural world is pretty much on the surface. So we should try to find out the truth about it. I'd be happy with the label anarchist as long as it's properly understood. I mean, anarchism covers a very broad range, but I've always understood it and taken the core fundamental element in it to be simply a tendency in human life and history, which seeks to identify and discern structures of oppression and hierarchy and domination, seek to perceive what Orwell points out we don't see, and challenge their legitimacy. They have to justify themselves. They're not self-justifying. And if they're illegitimate, trying to overcome them. And that, I think, is a permanent condition. So, yes, in that sense, I'd be happy to be called an anarchist. It can go from personal relations, family structures, up to international affairs, and everything in between.
We're in the middle of a financial crisis. What does the crisis teach to you?
The crisis follows from another truism, which has long been understood. There are fundamental market inefficiencies which are built in. One crucial one is what economists put aside as what are called externalities. So if you and I engage in some transaction, say you sell me a car, the two of us might reach a satisfactory outcome for ourselves, but we do not take into account, we do not price the effect on him. Okay, that's not part of our calculation in a market system, but there is an effect on him. More pollution, higher gas prices, congestion, and so on. Now, these so-called externalities can be huge, and in financial systems, they're fundamental. The reason is that risk is underpriced consistently, and as a matter of principle. A financial institution is dedicated to taking risks. That's what it does. Now, if it's well managed, it takes into account the potential losses to itself. But notice, to itself. It does not take into account what's called systemic risk, the impact on the whole socioeconomic structure if it suffers losses. And those systemic risks can be substantial. What that means is that risk is underpriced, and there's more risk taken than would happen in a properly functioning system. Now that's built into financial markets, and that's why when financial liberalization was instituted in the early 70s, since that time there have been increasing regularity and severity of crises, with the government being forced to step in to try to do something about them. You can't predict the exact moment or scale of a financial crisis, but you can predict that it'll occur as a result of financial liberalization. Now, it just happens that this one is extremely severe due to the religious fanaticism of market fundamentalists who tried to dismantle deregulation with obvious consequences. It's not a new observation. I mean, I guess a number of economists have pointed it out over the years and discussed it.
Would you go with the classic Marxist theory that capitalism lugs from crisis to crisis and that crises are inevitable?
I don't think it's a particularly Marxist theory, but we don't have capitalist systems, so we shouldn't be talking about capitalism. They don't exist. What we have are various varieties of state capitalism, and the state component of the economic system is fundamental. Doctrinal extremism tells us to suppress it, but if you think about it for a minute, take, say, the American economy, which is supposedly a free market economy. It's nothing remotely like that. I mean, the advanced economy, the cutting edge of the economy, relies crucially on massive state intervention. Take the place where we're now sitting, MIT. MIT is right at the heart of the creation of the advanced economy of the future, and it does it on public funds. That's why we have computers and the internet and airplanes and lasers and pharmaceuticals and so on. There's a massive public contribution. The system is based on the principle that the public pays the costs, takes the risks, and profit is privatized. Actually, you see it, it's now in the newspapers because you see it so dramatically in the financial system. And
so now even the Republicans say that.
So, so now everyone says it, but as if it's something new. But it's not something new. That's the way the system works.
What have 8 years of Bush administration done to America?
It's been a harsh blow to American power. I remember in the year 2000, a very well-known radical historian, a very fine one, wrote an article which surprised his friends, me too, in which he said it would be a good idea to vote for Bush because his administration is going to be a body blow against American imperialism, which in fact turned out to be true. In the Bush years, U.S. influence and power in the world has greatly declined. The unpopularity of the United States has sharply increased. Has had a devastating effect on the economy. For the majority of the population, real wages have pretty much stagnated. Benefits have declined, work hours have increased. Consumption increases, but substantially on the basis of borrowing. And this accelerated during the Bush years, which were the worst of the period.